Hello everyone, my name is Mikal Tamang, student of Namchi Government College, BSc 3rd semester. My presentation is based on Michelson Morley experiment and postulates of STR. Introduction. The Michelson and Morley experiment was performed by the two physicists Albert Michelson and Edward Morley. The main aim or purpose of this experiment was to prove the existence of ether. The experiment is a failed experiment, but it has eventually led to the special theory of relativity in which the stationary ether concept has no role. Now we're gonna see a brief description about ether. As we can see, the topic itself says ether as a hypothetical medium. Michelson and Morley had assumed that ether as a medium for the propagation of light. That means ether, it was the postulated medium for the propagation of light, or it was the hypothetical substance through which electromagnetic waves travel. As we know, all the waves require a medium to move across, so as in light also, it must also require a medium to propagate. So Michelson and Morley assumed that ether to be an hypothetical medium to propagate light. Now the experimental setup. In this experimental setup, Michelson has discovered or developed a device called an interferometer. The interferometer consists of a beam splitter, reference mirror, coherent light source, movable mirror, and screen. As you can see in this figure, it consists of a light source S from which light falls on the glass plate P through a convex lens L. The glass plate is placed at an angle of 45 degrees. It is partially silvered at the back surface. There are two mirrors M1 and M2 which are placed at equal distance from the glass plate. And lastly, it consists of a telescope which is used to absorb the interfering beams. So now the theory and the working part. So here a light beam from the source S is incident at the beam splitter, which is semi-silvered glass plate. Thus splits the beam into two coherent beams, and out of them one is transmitted and the other one is reflected. The transmitted rays strike the mirror M1, and from there it is reflected back to the plate. The reflected beam strike the mirror M2 and it is also reflected back to the plate. The returned beams from mirror M1 and M2 reach the telescope. The superposition of these two rays produce interference pattern which are seen through the telescope. Now Michelson and Morley had calculated the time taken by the refracted ray to come back from the mirror to the glass plate, and they also calculated the effective path difference between the two beams, and it is given by LV square by C square. On rotating the interferometer through 90 degrees, the path differences between the interfering beams become 2LV square by C square. Hence a fringe shift should take place in the field of view, but actually no fringe shift would be observed. So on rotating the interferometer in 90 degrees also, no fringe shift was observed. So the experiment was performed day and night and at the different times of year. Even though the sensitivity of the setup is to detect a shift of 0.01 fringe, no such shift was observed. Similar experiment was repeated by several groups, but the result was the same. The above experiment shows that the speed of light is constant in space respective to the direction and the speed of inertial frame. So here there is a inescapable conclusion that there was no ether after all. This conclusion was supported by Einstein's postulates that the velocity of light was a universal constant onto which no motion would be added. The special relativity, Einstein disproved the ether. Now the explanation of negative results. The following explanations were given for the negative result of Michelson Morley experiment. The ether drag theory. The moving bodies drag the surrounding ether with them, so we can say that there is no relative motion between ether and earth. Since the earth moves round the sun in its orbit in direction, it was argued that there is no relative motion between the two and hence no shift. So now here we can conclude that ether has no observable properties, so there is not an absolute space or a fixed frame of reference with respect to which absolute motion of the bodies can be determined. The velocity of the light is same in all the direction and does not depend on the motion of the source or the observer or both. This conclusion was supported by the Einstein's postulates that the velocity light was a universal constant onto which no motion would be added. Special relativity, Einstein disproved the ether. Thank you.